In this short video, I'm going to go over Preiphrastics and also embed 3 clothing items that will earn you a free 100 quiz grade by remembering them. So, Preiphrastics. First and foremost, the word Preiphratic is a Greek term that means literally Preiphrastics, roundabout way of saying something. And the Preiphrastics we have already learned. Over here, as you can see, I've given the third person singular of the verb aga, agere, egi, actus. And you will note that in the passive, down here, why I've called these Preiphrastics. The reason why is that they really are Preiphrastics in that they fit the technical definition of a participle of some sort added to a verb to be that combine the two of them, 2 words, 1 verbal expression. Most Latin teachers and people would not refer to these Preiphrastics. They would say it simply, that's just what the perfect passive verb looks like. That's just what the pluperfect passive verb looks like. That's just what the future perfect passive verb looks like. Instead, almost exclusively, we consider Preiphrastics to be the Preiphrastics that involve the future active participle and the future passive participle. And grammar sometimes refer to this as the first participle and the second participle. So let's take a look at them. Here you have, and I suppose I'll put it right here, actorus, and it could be actora, it could be actorum, and if we wanted to make it plural, we could have actori, actori, actora, but actorus. And over here we will have agendus. And all you have to do then is add a form of the verb to be. Now you could add every single tense of the verb to be to each of them in creating this future active Preiphratic and future passive Preiphratic. So let's go ahead and do that now. We'll just make it third person singular. So here it is est for present, and erat for imperfect, erit for future, fuit for perfect, fuerat for pluperfect, and fuerit for future perfect. And I will do the same thing over here. And just imagine that acturus, we're just going to shift it down. I'm not going to rewrite it all 6 times. So again, est, erat, erit, fuit, yikes, sorry, fuerat, and fuerit. This video is going to be kind of short, so your first item of clothing is a jacket. J-A-C-K-E-T, a jacket. Now, of the 2 of them, the one that we should prefer the most is the first Preiphratic, the future active. That is because it is what I like to call idiot-proof. In that normally, and if we look over here, normally, a student will not see the whole thing actus est. Instead, a student will think they see est, and they want to say he is. But remember that that would be a present expression in English. Instead, they must remember that combine the present of the verb to be with the perfect passive participle creates a perfect passive expression. So not is, but was driven, has been driven. Likewise, they look and they think they see erat, and so they will say was, and you can't, because it's not by itself. Instead, you must understand it together and say pluperfectly, had been driven. And likewise here, they think they will see erit, and they will want to say will be, but you can't because it's a unit, and you must understand that it is going to be has, or not has, but will have been driven. But over here, for the future active, Preiphratic, idiot-proof because you translate each individual word of the Preiphratic as though it were on its own. On its own, acturus is going to translate about to drive, and on its own, est is going to translate he is, and so that's why I call it idiot-proof. And so the way that you would translate it is he is about to drive, and usually the is long. He was about to drive. He will be about to drive. He has been or was about to drive. He had been about to drive. He will have been about to drive. Do you understand? Now, over here, for the future passive, it's more difficult and not idiot-proof. The future passive Preiphratic, also sometimes referred to as the second Preiphratic, shows obligation. And your second item of clothing is a tie. T-I-E. Now, the obligation that is shown here is passive, and so here you will translate it as He, obviously the subject for all of these, extending the againdos down will be he. And for here in the present, it'd be right now the obligation must be driven. Right now, he must be driven. But if it were to have happened yesterday, you would say he must have been driven. And finally, he will have to be driven. And so again, future passive, periphrastic, shows obligation. Now the other thing that you have to remember about the future passive periphrastic is the agency. An agent is a doer of an action. And for an active verb, the agent is the subject. The boy drives. The boy is the one that's doing it. But when you say the boy is driven, the subject is not the agent there because the subject is acted upon. So when you have a passive verb, like what we see over here, your agent for a normal verb that is passive, like all of these, is going to be what we call the ablative of personal agent. You take an a or an ob, and it then has as its object an ablative, and it would be translated by the whatever. So he is being driven to school a matre, by his mom. He was being driven a puella, by the girl. He will be driven to school a me, by me. He has been driven to school, let's say, a Marco. He had been driven to school, let's say, by a bunch of dogs, a conibus, in the plural. And let's say he will have been driven to school, let's say, by himself, a say, from sui, sibi, say. But if I were to have had the agendus, and let's go ahead and offer up those really quickly. Agendus est and agendus erat and agendus erit and agendus fuit. It says foot. Fuit and agendus fuerat, and finally agendus fuerit. The future passive periphrastic, which all of these are, has to have what's called a dative of agent. And it's like a little rhythmic saying that we have in class. Future passive periphrastic, dative of agent. Normally a dative is translated to or for. But when it is showing the agency, it is the agent of this obligatory action, you will translate it as we do in English, by. So here, he must be driven to school. Right now, not a matre, but in the dative case, matri. He must have been driven to school. Dative case, puelai, by the girl. He will have to be driven to school. The dative mihi. He must have been driven to school. Marco. Because remember, Marco is the dative form, and exactly the same as the ablative. Over here in the second declension, you can see Marco in the dative, which I have in the purple, and Marco in the ablative, which I have in the blue. Then finally, he had to have been driven to school, just conibus. And remember, for the dative of agent of each of these, there is no a or ob. That is because a or ob is applicable only to the ablative. And then finally, he will have to have been driven to school by himself. Sibi, from sui, sibi, say. And so, in each one of these, you can see, again, a future passive periphrastic shows obligation, dative of agent. And the future active periphrastic, absolutely idiot-proof. And your last item of clothing, socks, plural, S-O-C-K-S. Thanks for watching.